We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland, Majority Report, fun half. Let's start with something that is acrid tasting and bitter and disgusting. Of course, I'm talking about Rahm Emanuel. Here he is. I'm not going to say every one of our problems can be traced back to this guy, but so many of our problems can be traced to this guy.
Yeah. You know how the right is obsessed about the fact that they can say the R word on Twitter now and not get banned? This is the big deal. I remember back in the day when Rahm Emanuel was Obama's chief of staff, he called the advocates within the Democratic Party pushing for single payer effing R word. So that's what I think about when I look at this.
This guy was horrible as a DCCC chair. He's given credit for the 2006 Democratic victory, and I would counter with the fact that leadership was literally harboring somebody who had been identified as like predatory behavior on same-sex pages was enough for the American public. I mean, at one point, I think it was the whip of the Republican Party had to have a press conference and surrounded himself with children so that nobody would bring up the scandal as a way, because like you wouldn't talk about this in front of little kids. And he had an array of horrible candidates, all turned out to be a bunch of blue dogs that all had to self-finance themselves. And so much of the Democratic Party has gone in the way of Rahm Emanuel. When he went to Chicago, all he did was attack the teachers' unions. He privatized so much stuff in Chicago that they're still sort of like reeling from it for years later. I could just go on and on. He was, I think he was with the Clinton administration and was part of their sort of privatization and their triangulation. Just a horrible all-around guy. Everything bad about Democrats is embodied in this guy. And here he is trying to, he literally thinks like this is, I am sure in his mind, like I'm going to help the Democratic cause by throwing trans people under the bus. Here he is on Bill Maher.
I read that the current mayor of Chicago has an approval rating of 6.6%.
Round it up, 7.
So, okay. But, I mean, you were just the ambassador to Japan. If that was your approval rating in Japan, they would do harakiri on live TV.
They would do it at 27.
I mean, what's going on in Chicago as the person?
Look, I mean, we were talking about this a little earlier. I mean, you have also the mayor of New York not doing well. Obviously, other things also here in Los Angeles not doing well, the mayor here. Look, and then you got mayors like the mayor of San Francisco and other cities that are doing well. So I would say, look, there is a general rule. I had this when I was mayor. Safe streets, strong schools, stable finances. Focus on those 3 things and your city's going to be fine. We've gone through 5 years where people became way too permissive of culture. They were all, which is why everything's
Pause it for a second. Pause it for a second. Now, you see, the problem he had is he didn't know what point he was making. So he brings up Eric Adams. But then he has to pivot away from that because he realizes, wait, this is contrary to the point that I thought I was going to make here. Eric Adams is not some woke. Eric Adams ran
pro-cop
on just rolling in the cops. So like he's so full of shit, but so determined to make this point that he's going to have to like sort of round the block a couple of times until he sees a spot.
Right.
This is what's going on here.
But I mean, they are, I guess, the 3 mayors he listed, people of color. So they must be woke, right? Even though we all know that Adams was running as the most right-wing Democrat, a former Republican, and there were think pieces about how he's the future of the Democratic Party because he's so pro-cop. I mean, to lump him in with Brandon Johnson, who, his approval rating's really bad now, and he was a more progressive candidate, and Karen Bass, it makes no sense. But he's touting Lurie in San Francisco, because Lurie is the exact kind of mayor that Rahm Emanuel is. very pro-business, neoliberal. He's the guy that's trying to make workers, compelling them to go back to work because he represents Blackstone and private equity and commercial real estate conglomerates that are obsessed with like keeping up their rent prices. So those are the politics that he's referring to.
Became way too permissive of a culture. They were all, which is why everything's locked up at Walgreens and CVS, and that is a disaster.
Yeah.
And our school, and I'll say
Pause
this
it for
about
a second.
schools.
I gotta go back. Permissive of the culture, and that's why things are locked up. Like, what culture is it that he's talking about? This is just all such bullshit. It is exactly what Eric Adams ran on.
Yep.
And Eric Adams, aside from being a criminal, is deeply unpopular here.
Became way too permissive of a culture. They were all, which is why everything's locked up at Walgreens and CVS, and that is a disaster.
Yeah.
And our school, and I'll say this about our schools. I don't want to hear another word about the locker room. I don't want to hear another word about the bathroom. You better start focusing on the classroom. We had the worst reading scores for 8th graders in 30 years. And nobody, not a governor, not a mayor, not a president, not a secretary of education is talking about it. We're all wrapped up. Look, in 7th grade, if I known that I could have said the word they and got in the girls' bathroom, I would have done it.
Says a lot about him. Pause it. Well, that's the point. He's not trans. He's just some creepy ass guy who would have, basically used Porky's as which is a movie that was like a super date rapey that we all grew up on in the 80s, as his sort of bellwether. Just because you're a creepy ass white cis dude does not mean that trans people have the same sort of disposition and disrespect for other people that you do.
It's a relief to know that Rahm Emanuel is going after the predators here, because before trans people were more out in the open, there was no such thing as rape and sexual assault, apparently. Because
incidentally,
you need a disguise to do it.
I mean, not for nothing, but the Title IX clarification on bathrooms was issued when this guy was chief of staff of the Obama administration.
Right.
I mean, he's so full of shit. So full of shit.
Also, he when he was ambassador to Japan, had a big to-do at the Hiroshima and Nagasaki remembrance thing, because he didn't show up because Israel wasn't invited. And I'll just say, if there was an issue that really hurt the Democrats in the past year, I would point towards the support of Israel as it conducts a genocide more than I would bathrooms.
1,000%.
There was just an analysis
It's
done.
okay to be very, very ID Paul when it comes to Israel.
There was just an analysis done that I think trans issues, rated 22nd out of 22nd in terms of in terms of voter concerns. They're making this up because he doesn't want to acknowledge the reality that 100%. His politics contributed to this moment. And then I'm sorry, but when he talks about the culture and includes, if he was just talking about Johnson and Karen Bass is like a standard Democrat, but to include Eric Adams in that, like, I'm sorry, that sounded very racist to me. It just did. This is a guy who's out there trying to justify his type of corporate politics. Yeah.
And they're scapegoating all sorts of things. And the flip side of this is the Democrats yesterday in the Senate did not provide votes for cloture for a ban on transgender athletes in schools around the country. Now, Trump already issued an executive order on Title IX, and the NCAA responded by changing their policy, essentially banning trans women from their sports. Now, you should know that means that 10 out of the 500,000 student athletes in Division I, Division II, Division III were banned. So now women's sports are safe, everybody. Can't you feel it? And now they have they tried to pass a law to have, I guess, middle school, elementary school, high school coaches inspect the genitalia of the girls on their teams to make sure that their their junk is in the right place for them to play in these high school and middle school sports. And good for the Democrats for blocking this bill.
Yeah, I mean, that just, by the way, as they pretend they care about groomers, you want to have coaches in high school looking at the genitalia of your daughters, of your kids.
Yeah, it's the only way to protect girls in sports, Emma, is to have the coach inspect their genitalia.
I'm just like transporting my brain back to when I was like 13 and thinking about the violation and like the traumatic, like, I mean, they are freaks. And part of me thinks it's just like a roundabout way for these closet pedos to be able to look at little kids' genitalia no matter what it is.
The party that just last week made a spectacle of the Epstein documents by parading them around, and Jim Jordan, a guy who has covered up a massive abuse scandal at Ohio State, played a Rickroll. You think those people might not be serious about protecting young girls?
They were protecting girls from the point, I'm helped out here with the math, 0.002% of all athletes.
Feel so bad for those kids too, the 10 that just wanted to participate in the goddamn game.
Here's the point. It's not just about those 10. It is about the thousands of younger people who are trans who look at this and get the message, you need to disappear. You need to be disappeared. You need to go away. You need to die.
Yep.
It is about this message that's being communicated to even non-athletes. That's what it's ultimately about. And then we're going to protect girls. And now I look back on it. My daughter played junior high basketball. I can't believe she was able to do that without having the coach inspect all the genitalia of all the girls on their team so that we can be sure that they were safe in playing this game.
This is about control.
And yeah, by the way, we're forcing them to give birth.
This is about controlling who gets to be, because for them, a woman, and this is why this is only the focus on the girls and women's sports and not the men, is because they have this anxiety that they're going to be attracted to a trans woman, and they want to police womanhood in a way that is still within the kind of purview of men. Men get to define essentially what a woman is, and that doesn't get to be fluid at all. You're really only a woman if you get to be impregnated and carry my child, because a woman is of the man's rib. There can't be a trans woman, because what would she be if she wasn't just a vessel for my sperm? That's like where it comes down, what it comes down to. It's very tied to our reproductive rights also being taken away.
And, you know, I have no illusions about Republicans trying to use this as an electoral cudgel, because it's the same thing they did with marriage equality. It's the same thing they did with women getting to use their maiden names. It's the same thing they did with black people getting the right to vote. I mean, on and on and on. But to see Democrats out there pretending that this was an issue that prevented Democrats from winning is absurd. It's absurd.
It's absurd also because in 2022, Republicans ran on transphobia and they got smacked.
Yeah, we know it doesn't resonate.
But Trump was on the ballot this time, and he defies the rules of a lot of politics and turned out a lot of low propensity voters that voted for him, and a lot of lower propensity Democratic partisans stayed home because of the genocide in Gaza, which, by the way, Rahm Emanuel, to bring it full circle, is in full support of.
They'll take the wrong lesson from every midterm. Like they took the wrong lesson in 2022, but also 2018 when.
But this isn't taking a lesson.
No, I mean like emphasizing a lesson.
This is him going out trying to create a narrative. And people need to push back on this narrative because it's a false one, and he's doing it to protect his corporate interests. That's the thing. Just like this, just like the vote against the continuing resolution, their incentive structure is a function of like, what's going to be more perilous of an action for us to take. And sometimes they need to hear from us to understand that it's more perilous for you to do this than that.
Yeah.
Speaking of peril, let's look into what Bobby Kennedy's been up to when he's not trying to police the speech of protesters on the on college campuses.
The true pathogen in this country.
So there's a measles outbreak. Let's just check in on Bobby Kennedy. This is from, how long ago was this? This was ages ago, right? Where Bobby Kennedy was at the cabinet meeting at the White House with a T-shirt wearing Elon Musk there. Really, they got a lot more formal later in the week at the White House, incidentally. And here is Bobby Kennedy explaining the measles, in quotes, outbreak, in quotes.
There's a measles outbreak in Texas at the moment in which a child is reported to have died. Do you have concerns about that, and have you asked Secretary Kennedy to look into that?
Well, why don't we, Bobby, do you want to speak on that?
Well, we are following the measles epidemic every day. I think there's 124 people who have contracted measles at this point, mainly in Kings County, Texas. Mainly, we're told, in the Mennonite community. There are 2 people who have died, but we're watching it, and there are about 20 people hospitalized, mainly for quarantine. We're watching it. We put out a post on it yesterday, and we're going to continue to follow it. Incidentally, there have been 4 measles outbreaks this year. In this country last year, there were 16. So it's not unusual. We have measles outbreaks every year.
You sound a little under the weather yourself.
You sound a little under the weather yourself. Oh, we have measles outbreaks every year.
Eh.
Every year. Not that big of a deal a week ago. You know, the funny thing about diseases, communicable diseases, is that they get worse unless you actively try and suppress their spread. And in terms of public policy, the way that you do that is you try and have as much people vaccinated as possible, so there's just not as many places and opportunities for the disease to spread. And you also communicate to the public this is serious. And it turns out, like a week later, Bobby Kennedy has a different idea of public health, apparently. Dawn breaks on Marblehead. Again, I'll use that Massachusetts saying.
Never heard it before, but.
Kennedy writes in an op-ed. Now, here's what's really gross about this. He just does it on Fox News. Now, maybe it's because he knows that it's all the right-wing followers of his that don't get vaccinations. But here he goes. Measles outbreak is a call to action for all of us. Oh, I guess it is an outbreak now. I guess it's not just normal. Well, that's weird. I wonder what changed. Oh, he went in and heard from a doctor? Let's just read a little bit of this. MMR vaccine is crucial to avoiding potentially deadly disease. Keep scrolling down a little bit. As Secretary of the U.S. Department of Health and Human, I'm deeply concerned about the recent measles outbreak. That's weird. He went from it's completely normal this type of year 7 days ago to now deep concern. The situation has escalated rapidly. Oh, really? How much rapidly?
But there were 16 last year. You said, Robert.
There's 146 confirmed cases since late January. Like, has it really just escalated rapidly in the past week, or has it been escalating rapidly throughout that entire time?
Right.
And then he says, like, it's the first measles-related fatality in the United States in over a decade. Well, guess what? It was last week, too. Scroll on. Vaccines not only protect individual children from measles, but also contribute to community immunity.
What's that?
Protecting those who are unable to be vaccinated due to medical reasons.
Sounds woke.
Measles is a highly contagious respiratory illness with certain health risks. Now, okay, we go on and on with this. But then, apparently, what they're doing is they're still dropping the ball on vaccinations. They're still talking skeptically about the MMR vaccination in the schedule. They are now pushing vitamin A as a treatment for measles, which is all well and good. But doctors already understand this. When you communicate this to the public, there's a treatment for this. They start going, well, maybe I don't need to take a vaccine. Maybe I don't need a vaccine because it is much better to take the vaccine than to need the treatment. It's don't play with fire, not, hey, don't worry, we have a fire department.
Right. Right.
And here is the outrage that Kennedy dared to even say people should get their measles vaccine. This thread put together by the Real Truther. Mask off moment, says Patriot. They're all blue checks too, I think.
Of course.
Mask off moment for RFK Jr.
Wait,
telling
he was
people to get
wearing a mask before? A face diaper?
Nice.
More like
Idiot
mask
puts
on.
the outbreak in quotes.
Yes, telling people to get the MMR vaccine due to the measles quote unquote outbreak in Texas. So much for quote unquote maha. Yikes. Keep going down. Let's see what we got. Ian Carroll. I don't know who that is. Blue check. Hey, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Hell no. What the hell is this? The call to action is 1 in 32 children in America today have autism. Just because Pam Bondi and Kash Patel are burning their reputations to the ground doesn't mean you should too. Oh, I guess that was the Epstein thing.
Yeah. I also, can you guys just like stop talking about autism in this way? It is so honestly ableist, and you know, sometimes I think like whatever. This is where it is ableist, because they speak about autism as if it's like a cancer diagnosis or something like that, where we're still understanding that autism is a spectrum and there are people that fall along it, and we already know as well that it's been proven when they took the thimerosal out of the vaccines, in the early part of this century, that it had no effect on autism rates. So they talk about it like it's this disease that's being it's a binary, but it's a spectrum in the same way.
Took the thimerosal out of it. We don't.
But it's offensive.
That there's a rise in diagnosis is simply because people are diagnosing it more, not because it is more prevalent in humanity.
Everybody, when I was a kid, everybody was completely normal.
And it'd be nice if the people that are trying to make a name the Epstein files,
nobody was atypical.
Would not bring in bullshit about vaccines.
Everybody was typical. Here is Stu Peters. Oh, no blue check. What happened?
Oh, this is a really nasty guy, Stu Peters.
The only thing Bobby is, quote, fixing is to put needles in arms and pumping kids and healthy people full of autism-causing MMR shots. RFK is a vaccine, in quotes, pusher. You were duped.
Oh my gosh, just the fact that he says needles and arms. They're just afraid of needles, you little babies.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Dr.
This is what it is.
Jane
It's
Ruby.
anxiety in the population. That's why this does numbers.
RFK Jr. is a fraud. Not only is he pushing the fake measles narrative, he's telling you his mission is to regain your trust in the same federal health agencies that spent 5 years trying to kill you.
You are so
Not
hysterical.
stop COVID-19 poisonous mRNA shots.
These are Chicken Littles of needles.
Keep going. Let's see. Healthy Ranger. Health Ranger.
Wow, this is a great first line.
If RFK Jr. actually wrote this, then he's been captured and replaced with a robot clone.
That means he didn't actually write
Yes.
it then.
Nearly every statement in this paragraph is from a Fox News article attributed to him is blatantly false and contradicts his previous statements on vaccine risk. You know what? Don lights on this mobblehead, too. It turns out maybe Bobby Kennedy's been lying to you about a lot of stuff.
Oh, wow, yeah. Guy from a political family.
I don't know what you're talking about. Measles, quote, measles is a highly contagious respiratory illness with certain health risks, especially to unvaccinated individuals. The virus spreads through direct contact with infectious droplets. When an infected person breathes, coughs, or sneezes, early symptoms include high fever, cough, runny nose, and red, watery eyes.
He just quotes the whole thing for the rest of the thing.
That's it?
It's just self-evidently wrong, but even it sounds accurate to me.
All right, keep going. Next guy. This is pretty fun. Andrea Lynn, blue check. RFK Jr. is pushing the toxic MMR vaccine for the so-called, quote, measles outbreak, despite previously stating it causes autism. Parens, it does.
It doesn't.
He and Maha are complete frauds.
Well, we could have told you that.
Yes, that's true. That's what we've been saying.
Mm-hmm.
I want to give a medal to these people. It's not necessarily for what they think it is, but I still want to give them a medal. The more dissent, the better. I can't tell you, says Dr. Henry E. Lee. I wonder if these are actual doctors. Can you say you're a doctor on Twitter if you're not?
If you pay for a blue check, you can.
I can't tell you how much I do not approve of this message. I worked my ass off Friday for this, question mark?
What?
Fine, we'll do it alone then.
Also, doctors are not immune from being cranks.
I love a doctor complaining about working on a Friday.
I know somebody who's a doctor in New York State who was prescribing hydroxychloroquine during the pandemic. So, yeah, there can be a lot of crank doctors.
Candace Owens. Yeah, this is absolutely wild. I'm thinking I might need to release the MMR episode of my Shot in the Dark series for free, so parents understand this is not a safe vaccine at all. The combination vaccines are the worst. Ironically, I learned this from RFK Jr. You know what I love?
This is so crazy. I got to promote myself.
You know what I love? No, this is what it's fantastic. Keep this up. Keep this up. You know how you can tell that Candace Owens is in this to save the children? Because she might need to release the episode for free so parents can understand it. That's how you know she's in this for the kids. She wants to make sure that kids are safe. So much so, she's thinking she might need to release the episode for free. We had to keep it behind the paywall for an period of time for the safety of the kids' safety. That's why it was behind the paywall, because I care so much about the kids.
You're playing the game called capitalism.
All right, so one more. Should we do one more? This is fantastic. Jessica Rojas. Now, I want to be clear. I'm enjoying this, but I'm not going to enjoy it when they don't get the flu vaccine schedule right because they've waited too long. And I'm not going to enjoy it when there's kids dying of measles. And I'm not going to enjoy it when there are people who, dying of the flu or RSV or dealing with, I don't know what other vaccinations they're going to either pull off the market or suggest that people don't take. I'm laughing now because I like to see these assholes getting pissed at Bobby Kennedy. But I'm telling you, this is going to be a problem. This is going to be a problem. And God help us if that bird flu ends up in enough bodies with a different type of human-to-human flu. I mean, meanwhile, let's go back to enjoying this. Jessica Rojas, cats scare me, 2021, blue check. Unless Kennedy comes out and disavows that very pro-vaccine article put out by Fox, where he lied several times, he has tricked us all and nothing will ever change. Big Pharma wins again, and the innocent children will continue to lose. You know, if you really cared about Big Pharma, push for what the Biden administration started in negotiating drug prices. Your president, one of the first things he did was to come in and kill the commission that was looking into negotiating and finding out how to drive prices down. First thing he did. Let's go back to Jessica Rojas.
Also, sorry, the innocent children thing, these people talking about innocent children, who dies from raw milk? It's kids. Look at infant mortality and pasteurization, you freaks.
He would never have said, quote, go get your MMR at your doctor's office. He would have talked about MMR shedding, the adverse reactions from MMR, and the various connections to autism.
I love how
My heart
goes out to you.
is with you all. This is a huge betrayal.
Yeah, what you want is a bunch of lies that you idiots line up behind. That's all it ever was. Congratulations. It's all lies.
I like how MMR can shed, but not viruses.
Yeah.
Like
You
the
don't can
vaccine
measles.
shed.
Measles goes to other people. I don't know if you call it shedding.
Well, you should. Can we pull up that graph just to make this point?
for me, anti-vaxxer.
God, I would not want to hear him sing opera. This is from
That's
2019.
from Evita.
So this, Evita, right?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I guess a little old reference.
No, I've seen Madonna. Her version. Okay, so this is from PBS from 5 years ago, but it does just show like just go to the scroll down a little because it's like this is the number of cases and how precipitously it declined. 1963. That's when the measles vaccine came out.
That's a coincidence.
What do you know?
That's a coincidence.
What do you know? And
Well-
even in 2019, it was on the rise because this anti-vax BS was starting to really ramp up. But I would be curious to see like
Measles,
what it looks like now.
Bill.
Dave Rubin was
Character.
doing content about how the hippie leftists weren't getting vaccinated and putting us all at risk with Cara Santa Maria of Skeptic Side of the Universe about 10 years ago in the early part of that. You can still find that.
Is that right?
Yeah,
Oh,
I have it on a tweet.
That's fantastic. What should we get to here? Should we get to?
We should do your.
Okay, yeah. Let's do the.
Let's have
Yeah.
fun.
Speaking of Maha, I wonder how. I wonder if she's upset.
Who?
The one of the people on
Jillian,
the
whatever her name is.
on the thing was Maha, the Biggest Loser person.
Talk about the biggest
Which
loser.
one?
Jillian Michaels.
Oh, she's like that turf, right? And a Maha person.
A TV star.
Which
Okay.
one should we start with?
These are the people that are independents, but like actually are right wingers, but they're trying to find a new entry point.
The
into
new,
it.
like Joe Rogan, failed TV stars doing independent media. It's
Right.
interesting.
Right.
I mean,
And they'll still have agents.
no knock on all failed.
I mean, some of
TV
it works
stars.
out. I mean, it sounds like a bad situation.
Yeah.
It's a longer section, but I like the Doge part.
All right, let's start with that. I just there's a New York Times article today out. Oh, here it is. I'll just put this up just beforehand. It says, if you can't read it, I'll read the title. Struggling with errors, DOGE deletes billions more from list of savings. Incidentally, I mean, so they erased another $4 billion in additional savings. The group had erased or altered more than 1,000 contracts it claimed to cancel, representing more than 40% of all the contracts listed on its site last week. The deleted list included 5 of the 7 largest savings that it had claimed for credit just last week. It was the second time in a week that DOGE had deleted some of its greatest claims of success. early last week it erased all 5 of the largest savings it had claimed, because these are contracts that have already been fulfilled or were canceled 15, 20 years ago. I mean, damn. Posted this morning, the $400 million contract for armored Teslas that DropSite News got canceled now ranks as the single biggest savings made by DOGE after correcting all of their others. Do you understand that the Trump administration came in and ordered $400 million of Musk Teslas, Tesla trucks, and now they've canceled it and said it was their biggest savings.
After they weren't able to get away with saying the Biden administration actually ordered it.
So I went on last Thursday, my day off. That was a huge mistake. On the Piers Morgan show. They send so many emails. I just thought it was going to be Piers Morgan and I.
I know.
I didn't know. And I went back and went through the emails, and I think I found the email. I think originally it was supposed to be Anna Kasparin was supposed to be on there, but she must have had to get off early.
Oh, yeah.
Because she was on in the segment before.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so I was on with Benny Johnson, who I realized afterwards was one of the guys from Tenet Media who got all that money, that Russian money.
Yep.
And then this woman, I had no idea who she was. So I had no idea, who she was or what she was going to have to say. And that's
Seeing
it.
her face now, basically, I think she's a TERF, right? So she doesn't like trans people and thinks it takes away from feminism. And then is also a Maha person. So like, these are the folks that say they're independent, but they voted for Trump, and they're trying to find a new way to be on board the MAGA train.
I did not find this show particularly enjoyable or enlightening in any way. I got to be honest. But they had emailed me so many times in the past. And finally, they were recording on a Thursday, and I said, okay. And I didn't have to leave my house.
Sam, let's talk for a moment about the other big thing that's going on, which is this whole DOGE stuff with Elon Musk. You, I think, posted that the idea that DOGE is in any way about efficiency is absolutely a joke. They're not doing an audit. They're destroying the apparatus of our government. What do you base that on?
Well, audits are done regularly of agencies by inspector generals. The first thing they did was to fire all those inspector generals and not replace them. A. B, audits that lead to firings within a couple of days are obviously not being done. The notion that this is about efficiency when you're laying off thousands of IRS agents, when it is well known that every dollar spent at the IRS returns for the government $6 or $7. You're clearly not talking about efficiency here as measured in any other way other than allowing wealthy people to get away with cheating on their taxes. I mean, I could go on, but there's absolutely no evidence that there's a single audit going on. To the extent that they've saved any money, it has been largely dismissed as clerical errors on their part, and we still have no substantiation about it. So it's
hang on. That's not true. I mean, there's some of the stuff that came out about USAID, for example, some of the way that American taxpayers' money was being squandered on ridiculous projects.
Oh, wait a second.
And it wasn't insignificant sums of money.
Wait a second. You can determine that you can have an opinion that it's squandered. I can have an opinion that it's squandered, but it's been appropriated by the Congress. And in America, we have actually both statutory, constitutional, and court cases that say the president of the United States and the executive branch cannot decide unilaterally that they're not going to appropriate money that Congress has appropriated. I mean, the line item video has been found to be unconstitutional. We have the Impoundment Control Act from 1974. We have Train v. New York City from 1974, which is a Supreme Court case which enforces that. What they're doing is fundamentally illegal. I mean, you may think that some of the spending is not worthy. I may think it's not worthy, but that's just not the way our government works.
Okay. Julian, you were shaking your head there.
because it doesn't seem that the government is working. As a layman, when the USAID is exposed,
Pause. Can we just say, like, as a layman, as somebody who like sells caffeine pills for dietary purposes, like that's not a normal layman.
And what does
This
that
is a
mean?
health quack.
The government's not working. Like, what does that mean? The government's not working. Like, what is it that she thinks the government should be doing that's not working?
Yeah.
Like, the Postal Service is not working. The Social Security is not working. The IRS hadn't found billions of more dollars. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau hadn't saved consumers billions of dollars.
$21 billion returned to consumers for an $800 million annual cost. That's called pretty efficiency, but a lot of efficiency, by the way. Hundreds, I think, or at least tens of millions of Americans receive those checks back from being scammed by our financial institutions.
I mean, she's not saying anything, and they're immediately going to go to essentially just bigotry and xenophobia with the USAID. They don't even have the wherewithal to now, to her credit, at one point she does say there are big payouts to corporations, which I am all in favor of them being genuinely anti-corporate. Right. And I will guarantee you that will not be happening.
No, because they represent the private businesses that benefit from a healthcare system that isn't public. Alternative medicine is an industry. And it's not regulated.
100%.
And she's promoting it. And I just got to say, it's very satisfying to hear you give all of the reasons that it's both constitutionally reinforced, that the Congress has the power of the purse, and then the executive branch has to faithfully execute that. And then give those examples and hear her admit, as a layman, but I'm just going to say the government doesn't work and use that as my hinge point, because it's very easy to say the government doesn't work because it doesn't work in the way that we want to improve it. We want to tax the wealthy more so the government is better and provides more services to people, perhaps universal health care, perhaps universal pre-K, perhaps child care, and canceling student debt. You've got to do that through taxing the wealthy. But she just says it's broken. So what's her explanation?
Would Medicare for All cover her caffeine pills?
That it has been, and all of a sudden we have this transparency that we've never had in my lifetime.
None of this stuff was hidden at all. None of this stuff was hidden at all. It's just that
so you're telling me that the average American knew that we were funding friggin' operas for trans people in who knows where?
American was interested
nobody
in what
knew
USAID was supporting.
Come on, man. Do you really believe that?
Yes,
do you really believe that people knew this and this was common knowledge? And there's no question that some of this was a slush fund for the CIA.
Well, actually, you know what? The truth is, you can both be right here. Right? Yes. Sam is right that it was there to be found.
Yeah.
And Gillian's right that absolutely nobody told the American people about the specifics. So you can both be right.
What can happen in our process of government?
No, I understand. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying it wasn't there. I'm not saying it wasn't there to be found. But Benny, it was only when Elon Musk and his young team.
Pause it for a second. You know how the American public is intimately aware of how the $900 billion annually is spent with the Defense Department.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, or oil lease giveaways, or I don't know, corn subsidies. Or any other functioning. In fact, I don't think most Americans realize that their Medicaid is necessarily paid by the government. Or, Medicare Advantage, what a ripoff it is for Americans. There's a lot of things that dwarf the tens of millions of dollars that are spent on Sesame Street in Iraq, which, frankly, based upon what we did to that country, we should be putting a lot more into stuff like this. Or are we actually helping fund things in Afghanistan?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we promised that we would rebuild that country after we destroyed it.
There's been past studies that 1 in 4 Americans, it ranges on in the election cycle, don't even know who the vice president is. So if she's saying that, of course they don't know these very obscure
I discovered who the vice president is. I don't know what he's telling everybody.
The point is that we should be educating the public more about what our government does, but all of this has been available because of the inspectors general and what they do with through the normal functions of our government,
No, it's not even
auditing
Inspector
these.
General. Listen, all this stuff that USAID did, except for maybe some of the covert stuff, is laid out on their website. We don't know anything that wasn't readily available before. Go ahead.
Benny, it was only when Elon Musk and his young team of guys with their sabers got into it, they found this stuff, right? And told people.
They didn't find it. They just they publicized it.
Well, exactly. But that's how the
publicize it with horrible context. Go ahead.
They publicized it.
Well, exactly. But that's how the that's how the American that's how the American people found out about
authority to cut it.
Yes.
So Congress, Republicans control every house of Congress. They control the presidency. They could pass a bill tomorrow saying we don't want to fund these things. But what's happening when they cut USAID is you've got literally 400,000 meals for children who are technically wasting away. It's in Africa. Maybe my guests don't care about that. But the fact is that they're sitting in warehouses in Rhode Island and in Georgia right now, food that is pre-digested practically because these kids are starving and it's sitting in warehouses. It's going bad and they have no way to ship it.
Okay.
Because USAID has been shut down.
All right, Benny.
I'm sorry.
Benny?
That's not constitutional or legal.
Okay, Benny.
It's incredible. So I've heard the Constitution thrown around a lot here. All right, let's talk about Article 2 of the Constitution. The executive branch has a clause called the vesting clause. The vesting clause makes one single man that is elected by the whole American people the only position in the federal government that has the entire whole of the country elect him is the president.
Pause it for a second. I just want to because I'm sitting here going I'm listening to this and I'm going where is he going with this? Like the vesting clause. He's the only person to be where is he going with this? And I will tell you, spoiler alert, nowhere. But go back because I want you to feel he's building this argument with his voice as if I'm about to make this profound conclusion about the existence of a president who is the only person elected across the country. And
but the vesting power is about the public vesting the executive branch with by electing him essentially. This isn't about all right, whatever. Well, let's hear where he's going.
People. The only position in the federal government that has the entire whole of the country elect him is the president of the United States, who is vested with the power to oversee the executive. And that includes congressional spending. That includes the functionaries of the government.
First of all, I don't know what congressional spending really means. I don't want to get too technical here, although he's making a constitutional argument, this professor. There's no congressional spending. There is congressional appropriation. And those legislative powers to appropriate are both exclusive and explicit by the Constitution given to Congress. The executive has the exclusive power to execute the directives from Congress when it comes to appropriations. He's just making this up. He just read it. Somebody fed this to him. It's such a half-baked theory. It's just absurd. Go ahead. Go back a little bit.
President of the United States, who is vested with the power to oversee the executive. And that includes congressional spending. That includes the functionaries of the government, including the commander-in-chief. There are appointed judges. There are elected at state and local levels, members of Congress, but only the president is elected by the whole American people. Now, I have a
that means nothing. There is a legislative vesting clause. There is an executive vesting clause.
Yep.
There is a judicial vesting clause in terms of what their enumerated powers are. It has nothing to do with how they are elected or why they are elected. It is the government was set up in this way, and it's just by sheer sort of like talking like this, he thinks he's making a point.
And using the word vest, but we know that that is not one of the powers that is vested in that part of the Constitution. The part that we're describing about having the power of the purse is vested to Congress.
The powers that we're talking about typically are like pardons and treaties.
Yes.
Not line item vetoes.
Right.
The president is elected by the whole American people. Now, I have a giant map in my studio. I don't know if your production team.
All right, pause it. Now, listen, this is where I made a huge mistake. This is where I made a huge mistake, and I'm going to own it. Because he's talking about this giant map in his studio. Continue. See if you can pick out what mistake I made at this point.
It is. This is what America decided in 2024 in a landslide, and with the popular vote, the whole of the American people decided to vest a single man, Donald Trump, to hunt down waste, fraud, and abuse. Because while maybe there are some type of programs that you might view as just, what I view as just is feeding the American people. What I view as just is filling the potholes, educating, healthcare, and the capacity to serve Americans. And so what America voted for was America first, and transgender operas in Chile isn't exactly America first. And to say that USAID was
said a lot of words, but you've said nothing. You haven't addressed the Constitution, the Supreme Court cases, the Impoundment Control Act. None of that. You can
pause it. Okay, listen. Here is the mistake I made. When he pointed to his big map in his studio, I should have said, "Did Russia pay for that?" Because they did. He got millions of dollars from the Russian government. Now, he didn't know. He didn't know. He wasn't savvy enough to realize that Mr. Gregorian from Belgium wasn't real because, of course, of the one-page glossy CV that he got. But I should have asked at that point. So that's on me. People say, like, why didn't you refute the landslide thing? Because, first of all, whether he gets a landslide or not does not allow him to break the law, to controvert the Constitution, and go against Supreme Court precedent. All right, let's just play a little bit.
He didn't, for the record, under 50% at the end of the day.
He had under 50%. You can't have a landslide.
With a plurality.
Cases, the Impoundment Control Act, none of that. You can say that you don't think it's right to feed starving children in Africa. That's your prerogative.
How federal money is feed starving children?
Donald Trump. I can't believe you're going with the starving children. You're going with the starving children.
No, it does. I mean, it does other things that you don't like.
All right,
It also does this.
Allow the lady in the room to speak, please.
USAID money spent.
Chaps, let Gillian have her say.
On feeding starving children or a coup in Ukraine in 2014.
Guys, let Gillian speak for a moment. Gillian.
The feeding starving children thing is such a freaking red herring. So first of all, the vast majority of you.
Here we go.
Ooh, this is a lot to take in right here.
You know who didn't think it was a red herring? Pop up that link I just put on there from CNN. USAID reinstates contracts for Georgia company that helps feed malnourished kids after Elon Musk responds to CNN reporting. Apparently, it was not a red herring. Apparently, she just doesn't give a shit, a friggin' shit.
Don't care at all. Neither of these ghouls.
Don't care one iota. Now, again, that's their prerogative. It's just that the United States Congress in the past has deemed it in our nation's interest to make sure that if we have the ability to feed those children, we do. Maybe it's a cynical interest. If we feed them, and all these packages, incidentally, say from the American people. Maybe it's a cynical interest because we want to project soft power. We want to have people like us because around the world, whatever it is. Continue. We'll get to that.
Gillian.
Big fan of
The
Jillian.
feeding starving children thing is such a frickin' red herring. So first of all, the vast majority of this USAID bloat and corruption does not go to that. Second of all, we have children starving here in America. But third of all, and what you don't know and what you have not looked into.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
is there are children starving in America? Sam just she says she's a layman. Sam just addressed it. They are trying to cut SNAP. They are trying to cut SNAP, which on average in a month, I think feeds over 40 million people in this country, which includes children. So she doesn't even know what she's talking about.
They rolled their eyes at that part too.
All right.
They want to get rid of free lunches in schools.
Both here and in Africa, which I know I care about both. She cares about neither, but is pretending to care about the kids in America.
It's too much to hear Benny pretend about feeding people.
You know,
please.
Jillian, if you want to be a fitness influencer, it would be helpful, I guess, for all your future clients that you want to rip off, for them to be able to survive to adulthood, so that they can, buy whatever product that you're hucking on the marketplace.
Third of all, and what you don't know and what you have not looked into, okay, is that read a book. It's called Save 3 Lives, and it's by the Rodale family. And it has to do with the fact that our big ag companies went into the developed world to addict their soil to our GMO crops. It's a money laundering game. They can grow their crops in their soil far more efficiently and did for thousands of years before ConAgra and Cargill and Monsanto and ADM went in. You just don't know that because you haven't done your homework. So you're like, oh, there's children starving in Africa. When really, it is about billions of dollars going to big ag. That's what that's really about. And I've seen it firsthand when I went to South Sudan and stayed at a refugee camp. So don't play your starving children card. I can't.
Well, listen, it's not my card. It's just simply the reality. And the fascinating thing about
it is your card, though.
Piers,
your game is like nobody's empathetic because children are starving.
We are
When
talking
that's not what that's really about.
USAID is a percentage point, like literally less than 1% of the U.S. budget. But because there is this attitude amongst frankly, it's not just USAID. I don't like them cutting the IRS. I don't like them cutting the EPA. I don't like them cutting Labor Department. I don't like them cutting the National Labor.
Wait, someone tell me what is going on in Benny Johnson's brain?
Right.
Like, he just sits there with this grin, and it's unclear to me, like, what it is that he thinks he's communicating. This is what they teach you in media training. If you smile, and again, like, this is a point I make a lot about why Democrats should be doing stuff like protesting and avoiding the thing tonight and coming out and explaining to people why they should be upset, because it's always about the reaction shot, right? Like, people can tell, or are, I should say, steered towards how they should feel about things based upon the reaction shot. And so, Benny's up there smiling because he wants to, like, project that, like, he's winning the argument in some way, but his facial tics are just so strange. It's almost distracting, but go ahead.
EPA. I don't like them cutting Labor Department. I don't like them cutting the National Labor Relations Board. I don't like them cutting the FDA.
If you like the level of debt your country's in.
I don't think it's as much of a problem as you do. But here we know the debt shot off like a rocket with the Bush tax cuts and then with the Trump tax cuts, and they want to extend those. And so if we want to deal with the debt, and if that's a genuine concern, we can go back to the time in this country where we had the greatest economic expansion during the 50s and the 60s, when we had a top tax marginal rate of 90% of every dollar that would be earned over $470,000. Today, it would be $3 million. And if these guys are very concerned about the debt and deficit, we have a way of raising that money. We can go back to the greatest economic time of this country. So if that's genuinely their concern, we have that power to do it. I mean, we're not spending as a function of GDP. We're not spending significantly more per capita than we were in those years. The problem is that we don't have the revenue. There's been huge tax cuts for millionaires and billionaires and presided over by two Republican administrations over the past 20 years.
Okay, Benny, on that point, respond.
Piers, I love it. I love it. This is my favorite argument I've ever heard on your show. I love it. Go to the American people. Sam, I beg of you, join the DNC, run for DNC chair. I'll do anything, okay? I want your ideas to be the
Pause it for a
ideas that
second. Now,
Democrats...
this is what you say when you have absolutely no response, literally no response. You spend your entire segment of talking in basically saying, I don't think that's politically palatable.
There you go.
Go ahead.
Anything, okay? I want your ideas to be the ideas that Democrats bring to the midterms and to the 2028 election. More IRS agents. Raise taxes to 90% of wages. I love it, Sam.
No,
How do I get you in the chair, man?
90%.
How do I do
every
it?
dollar.
How do I do it? Where can I donate, Sam?
Just send the money to me directly.
It's the greatest
So
argument ever.
he's
You're
doing
right,
what Tim
Sam.
Pool did. Yeah, the talk over because he doesn't actually want you to have a response here.
And also understand, like that, the argument that he's making, you could literally have that argument in any context, in any way. That's how generic he has to be with this. It's fascinating. I mean, this is why I found it really, really boring and tedious, because the arguments that I'm getting from both these people, and Piers doesn't want to jump in because I have a feeling that Piers is a little bit, has felt like he had to farm this out. The arguments from both these people are so vacuous and could literally apply to like an argument we were having about a parking spot on, like, oh, you tell people that you want to get rid of all the parking spots here. I'd love to see that. There's no substance at all to what he's saying. It's completely generic. And I found it rather boring in some ways, but.
How do I do it? How do I do it? Where can I donate, Sam?
Just send the money to me directly.
It's the greatest argument ever. You're right, Sam.
Taxing millionaires and billionaires actually does quite well in terms of polling. And when Americans see what wealth disparity looks like in this country today, when they actually see the wealth disparity,
yeah, we've seen
it's
wealth
quite
disparity.
popular.
It looks like a federal government that's $37 trillion in debt, spending money on total bullshit.
You don't know what wealth disparity means.
And absolute and total fraud. Hey, Sam, why don't you answer a quick question?
You can Google it and find out what it means.
Hey, Sam, why don't you answer a quick question for me? Why are the richest counties in all of America the 5 major counties in the DMV right around Washington, D.C.? Can you explain to me, what do those counties do? Are there some mineral deposits there I don't know about? Did they strike oil? Is there some type of rich industry that's created around Washington? Maybe you could answer me that question. Why are those people so filthy rich? You don't seem to like rich people, so maybe explain why.
I can answer that question.
What does DJ
We have to start a timer that we start the second somebody poses a question and then continues to talk.
Exactly.
Maybe you could answer me that question. Why are those people so filthy rich? You don't seem to like rich people, so maybe explain why.
I can answer that question.
What does DC
You want me to
make?
answer? It's lobbyists. It's lobbyists like all of the ones that have been appointed to Donald Trump's
Pause it. Wait a second. Now look at what is going on with this guy's face.
It got a lot tighter all of a sudden.
It got tighter.
Watch 5 degrees in temperature.
It's so strange. He's like trained himself to sort of like have only like a bizarre smirk. Now, listen, I feel like I got smugness down. I feel like I do that pretty well. I can't make head nor tails out of what he is trying to communicate with that face. It looks like I don't know. It looks like he's about to vomit or something. I can't tell. But go ahead.
Why?
I can answer that question.
What does DC
You want me to
make,
answer it?
Sam?
It's lobbyists. It's lobbyists like all of the ones that have been appointed to Donald Trump's cabinet and to political positions. Rich lobbyists for all sorts of these industries that you supposedly have a problem with. I mean, that's where all the money is being made. It's not being made by federal workers, it's being made by lobbyists.
Pause it.
And
Now,
those are
I should
sent by-
also say, I did not include contractors.
Yeah.
Private contractors. Now you could argue like they are lobbying to get contracts too, but it's private contractors and maybe a large percentage of those are defense contractors as well. But it's the point remains. It's all of these corporations that they supposedly have a problem with, and Donald Trump. Pull up a list of Donald Trump's lobbyists in Donald Trump's cabinet. It's extraordinary.
You mean Arlington, Virginia isn't full of people who perform in trans operas?
It is. I mean, maybe there are lobbyists who are, but it is extraordinary how many lobbyists are in his cabinet.
His literal attorney general was a lobbyist for the government of Qatar and then some major corporations in this country as well.
And he hires, if not lobbyists, then just executives who hire lobbyists. For instance, like the Forestry Service. I just mentioned they replaced a soil scientist who is the head of the Forestry Service with a logging company executive. They're doing this at every turn. The head of the FDA. I think maybe we'll have Papantonio on to talk about this thing. The head of the FDA was a top lawyer protecting drug companies that were getting sued left and right. I mean, everything that they supposedly have based their entire fake populist movement on is completely being controverted by Donald Trump, and they don't care. Go ahead.
By federal workers, it's being made by lobbyists. And those are sent by corporations. If you will join me as part of my campaign that you're interested in me running the Democratic Party, in calling for Donald Trump to fire all of the lobbyists he's hired so far, it wouldn't leave many people left in the government. But if you'll join me with that, we can start to chip away at that problem you have with the counties around D.C.
We've just got some breaking news from this.
Okay. And then they went on to talk about how all this Epstein news is going to be huge, and they're very excited about it. Donald Trump's chief of staff, former lobbyist. Sean Duffy, former lobbyist. Collins, former lobbyist. It's just off the top of my. Who else we got?
You said Pam Bondi, right?
Pam Bondi, you said.
Yep. I mean, it doesn't just need to be lobbyists. I mean, you have literal CEOs like Howard Lutnick, who is now the Commerce Secretary, who has his company has all Cantor Fitzgerald has all of these crypto holdings, and what do you know? He's supposed to be overseeing the regulation of cryptocurrency himself.
Their solution, like just to go back to Jillian Michaels saying about the whole GMOs and stuff like that. Look, I think major ag companies should be regulated severely and maybe even nationalized. But I'd also say that organic-y type of thing that she represents, it'd be catastrophic. There's an article in Foreign Policy Magazine 2022. In Sri Lanka, organic farming went catastrophically wrong. Nationwide experiment is abandoned after producing only misery. Basically, they tried to go pesticide-free, and it caused food shortages. So these people have no real solutions other than they have a perverse incentive in that when people are sicker and aren't covered by public health, they turn to quacks like them.
Yep. Oh, boy.
Well done.
Yeah, I just realized we went way over time.
That's okay, but satisfying. This is what the people want.
Anonymous. Can someone explain to me why a lesbian like Jillian Michaels, is she gay?
I don't.
Yeah, I've just found that out doing research on
Aligns
caffeine
themselves
pills.
with the right and votes for Trump. When they're done with trans and immigrants, they'll eliminate her right to same-sex marriage and to parent and non-biological children. Well, you could ask the same thing of Dave Rubin.
Yeah,
you could ask the same thing of Matt Schlapp.
Yeah.
She's a businesswoman.
I mean,
you can ask the same thing of any marginalized group that votes for the Republicans. The reality is that they put their class interests ahead of those incursion into their rights because they are under the impression that they will be spared. They are just fundamentally selfish people, and also being lesbian or being gay doesn't exclude you from transphobia. There are plenty of TERFs who are lesbians.
Well, Benny Johnson was slamming trans people. Is he not gay?
He's not gay.
He's not?
He's not. Yeah.
Seriously? Oh,
yeah. It's a little confusing.
Just a plagiarist.
But yeah, I mean, like a lot of this TERF movement, trans exclusionary radical feminists, they use feminist language to pervert feminism to exclude trans people from it. Like they are we get to these markers in our history where there's like a baseline in terms of like what is acceptable with like how to treat women or whatever, and they use the rights that have already been accrued and pervert them to burn the bridge behind them and make it so that trans people are marginalized. And they're under the naive impression that they won't come for them next. But we saw I think it's North Dakota, there might be another state that is escaping me. They're already introducing resolutions trying to overturn Obergefell and gay marriage.
Yep.
But for her, she's rich, so it's fine.
Who cares?
She's trying to make money.
Sachs Repair. Do you guys have any information on the court case involving income-based repayments for student loans? No. In fact, I was just digging through the cases are so. There's two different cases. The Eighth Circuit, I think, is one of them, and they're so Byzantine. It's we got to get somebody on to talk about it. I literally was reading the article, and I just said, like, we got to get somebody on because I can't make head nor tails about this. I do know though that if you are on income-based repayments, your payments have probably shot up. Clever leftist, Sam, as renowned metrosexual, can you reveal your haircut style, routine, techniques for an aspiring zaddy? You know, this haircut I got is different from my normal haircut because I missed it and I had to go do that Jubilee thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to my girlfriend's haircut place.
Yeah.
And
You're not thrilled with it?
Wasn't thrilled.
Well, unfortunately, though, it's tough to maintain your level of hair coverage at your age. So I don't know if people can use this as a replication, right? That's not many men your age have the hair.
Oh, I thought that was a knock.
No, it was a compliment.
I will say this,
sort of.
that I've been trying to push Sunset Lake Sabade to do like a hair product.
Yeah.
Because I used to use this stuff from like the Body Shop, and they stopped. I don't even know if they're out of business or what. They don't do it anymore. So I make my own with coconut and beeswax.
Oh, cool.
That's it. Just those two things. There it is. I'll see you on my self-care YouTube channel, whatever it is. Hey, Sam, Emma, happy Tuesday. Thanks for responding to my email. Had a phone call with the king at SSA last night. Lots of information. Hook me up. I will do that. I thought that you had been in contact. All right. Rosaf. Hey, Sam, are you guys covering the State of the Union later today? No, you should be on Piers more often. Your message gets across, and you made the other two people on the panel look like kids.
Well, they keep inviting us on like
Maybe.
a lot, but it's also just like, what's the value? I don't know.
Maybe. Militant apathy. You really think RFK and his spawn haven't been vaxxed? Bullshit. Well, he said if they were young kids again, he wouldn't do it this time. Black-pilled Wiki, if you're going to take a swig on camera during Piers Morgan panel, at least make sure it's a Majority Report branded mug that you can flash to the audience. Rookie mistake. I know I didn't have one at home. I know that. Viper. Sam, we need to start calling the DNC for what it is, a corporation. Okay. Joe Snuffy. It's too much. They're aiming to cut personnel expenses by 8% on the military budget. I would imagine it's really yes. It's all just like cutting services for military personnel as opposed to like the sales of weapons or whatnot. Dark Soul, Trump's only card seems to be the whole rant, naming every person Putin has lied to and broke agreements with, and then saying, but he wouldn't with me. Incredible play, sir. All right, 5 more of these. Catfish James. I work in metal product distribution. I've been having to explain tariffs all over again. But something that people do not understand is that we pay the mill's price on delivery. So even if we ordered items 2 months ago, we pay today's prices when the goods are delivered, increasing our cost immediately and now exponentially. Prices jumped 50 cents per pound on Monday and are expected to jump by that much again today. Jeez. Hogtown. My wife and I got invited to a department meeting at my son's school, public, to talk about his learning, ADHD, and individual learning supports. As they went through his issues, I realized they could have been speaking about me when I was my son's age, except nobody gave a crap about ADHD when I was a kid or bothered to diagnose it. If you were still testing reasonably well, it's the same with autism. It was always there. It's just getting diagnosed more today, without a doubt.
100%. I mean, and that's why RFK, when he talks about when he talks about public health, his first concern is how expensive it's going to be to treat everybody who needs treatment because of things like that.
And I will say, like, is it conceivable to me that we have environmental factors that may be increasing things? Certain, and I'm not saying specifically ADHD or autism, but certainly some diseases and maybe not others, without a doubt. Without a doubt. I mean, we know lead was a neurotoxin. We know it was problematic. But the underdiagnoses with 100%, and I would argue within like 5 or 10 years, we're going to have, the spectrum is going to get more defined and more people will be added, diagnosed to the spectrum with slightly different, like sort of 100%. Planes of neural atypical issues, if you want to say, in instances, maybe strengths and advantages in other ways. Without a doubt.
Greta Thunberg talks about this and the fact that with her diagnosis, it gave her very specialized interests and a focus like that. It can also be, like, for her superpower, as she describes it. And it is that for a lot of people.
Alex, my farmer uncle primed everyone that our family farm income will be going down. I don't understand how he can understand so much, yet still think that government bureaucracy is the actual problem.
Because he's not organized. I mean, when farmers are organized, they understand these things. When they're individual capitalists left in their own, it's all, who knows?
National Razor. I've been calling my congressman, Schumer and Jeffries, almost every day. Schumer's people started asking for zip codes, which is a good thing. It's a good sign. I tell them not to vote for the CR and then read Article 1 live on television, explain what is happening to the American people, and I tell them the people will be the people will understand. The only thing I would add to your Congress people, if you are, Hakeem Jeffries, maybe not, do not join the crypto caucus. Have there be one Democrat in it, Richie Torres. All right, 3 more of these. Jonathan Armstead. Here in Chicago, I used to work a job by City Hall. Rahm would start his day at the same coffee shop I frequented. This is gossip, but dude was abrupt to staff, a bad eater, and super short. I have no problem being this petty. Nice. Worcester Don Draper. Did you see the story about the gold Cybertruck owner in Worcester who wants to trade it in because he gets cut off and yelled at daily? No, I didn't know that. That's fantastic.
He's a plastic surgeon.
Proud to be from Worcester. Is that true?
Yeah, I saw a story.
That's freaking awesome. That's awesome. Good for him. Trade it in, dude. Melt it. Put it in your teeth.
Ghost right into the Atlantic.
I work in the automotive industry in Canada, says Dan from Windsor, and everyone here is worried. You guys have to hit the streets. If you see a Tesla, give the driver a thumbs down. And the final IM of the day, we didn't even get the phone calls today. My clock management is just horrible. Rail machine. When you say let Richie Torres be the only Dem in the crypto caucus, you're either confused or lying about what the Democratic Party is and what its incentive structure has been for at least 30 years. Well, I don't think you get the point of what I'm saying, ding dong.
Yeah,
if I thought that he would be the only person in there without people calling, then I wouldn't tell people to call.
Democrats are also, that same incentive structure made them pro-charter, and then that's more toxic than it was previously.
I like writing in anonymously on the IMs to tell Sam he's confused about the Democratic Party, about doing this professionally for over 20 years.
But it's just so stupid. Like, if I thought the Democratic Party on its own would make Richie Torres the only person in that caucus, then I wouldn't call for people to call and mention it.
And if it's so clear, why is he the first one?
And why don't you explain what you mean by that instead of just making some snide remark about how he's confused or lying? What is the incentive structure, and can you elaborate?
I could probably sit down right now and come up with a list of at least 10 people I think who are going to join that caucus. But the point is to make it toxic. Can you make it toxic enough so that only 9 of those 10 join it?
Well, that person's not going to be making any calls, so what are we?
Yeah, too much of a coward to call in.
All right, Budaplex.
Or do something.
Sorry.
Final I am, because that one was so annoying. Budaplex. Worcester forever.
Nice.
I love it. There's some good stories coming out of Worcester. Worcester became a sanctuary city recently. And now this, people are having a tough time with their gold Tesla. That is pretty sweet. Matt, Bradley, Emma, great job today, folks. See you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I